reach beyond the darkness, beyond the grave, to an unexplored dimension as we travel to the mysterious realm of ghosts. Journey with us into the world of ghost stories. A family in Texas experienced one of the most bizarre and troubling cases of poltergeist activity when they learned their dream home was built over an undisclosed graveyard. And the nightmare began.
This may seem like an ordinary neighborhood, but 7 out of 8 families picked up and moved far from here at tremendous cost, including losing their mortgages. I wonder what really happened to drive them all away. The box office hit Poltergeist tells the story of a terror-stricken family whose home was built on top of an undisclosed graveyard. Good horror fiction? Not necessarily. During the same time the movie was released, these silver screen nightmares became reality for residents in a Texas subdivision. Their story began in 1981 when Ben and Jean Williams moved into their dream home, a newly constructed house in this brand new subdivision. Shortly after settling in, however, a strange feeling crept over them. At first, the feeling manifested itself slowly as mere oddities. Hundreds of ants invading the house, snakes slithering through the floorboards, plants not growing, and unusual sink spots in the yard that couldn't be filled in. Then other things began. Toilets flushing on their own, the garage door opening and closing by itself, unexplained noises and images, none of which had a logical explanation. At first, neither Jean nor Bill talked about what was happening or what could be causing it, although each had their own private thoughts. Thoughts that frightened and bewildered them, once too bizarre to even contemplate. It was as if their house were taking on a life of its own. Run by what? Ghosts? But why? How? Houses built in the Newport subdivision were built on what was once McKinney family land. The McKinneys are no longer living, but at one time they were wealthy landowners with a huge plantation and countless slaves.
I just knew there was some slaves buried down. Yeah, that's what I heard. Slaves buried back up in there.
We spoke with Freddie Eagleton, the oldest living resident of Barrett Station.
Yeah, I've been here all my life.
He confirmed there were no grave markers in that area.
The place was owned by Will McKinney, and he let, our folks bury up in here for a long time,
The site of these unmarked graves became known as Black Hope Cemetery. John Armstrong, the grandson of Harrison Barrett, founder of Barrett Station, showed us the place. So do you have firsthand knowledge of the fact that in that Newport area there were actually people buried there?
That's true. That's true.
Descendants of the slaves of the McKinneys live here in Barrett Station, not far from Crosby. They remember Black Hope Cemetery. Some of their relatives are buried there.
I know one of my seniors that come here, he has a family that was buried out there at the Black Hope Cemetery.
Oh yeah, lots of people buried there. I have buried some of them in there myself.
We spoke with Keith Krizak, whose father Daniel owned White Cemetery during this time, one of the few established cemeteries in the area. I asked if he thought it was possible to have these homes built on top of a graveyard.
Folks were buried back there, and it's the cemetery. Just no one knew that there was a cemetery back there at all when they developed the area.
In fact, some did know. Jasper Norton lived at the house behind me. He has since died, but he was one of the few people who warned the residents in the Newport area that they were building on graves. In fact, he himself buried people in those graves when he was 14 years old. He pointed out some of the unmarked grave sites, but apparently nobody listened to him. As time went on, whatever spirits might have been awakened at the Williams house influenced everyone who came into contact with them. The family experienced an uncanny number of misfortunes, deaths, and diseases. Even the animals were affected, behaving strangely and dying unexpectedly. The Williams withstood their plight in silence. Then their worst fears were realized when their neighbors, building a pool, unearthed the corpses of two people, a black man and woman.
They would never find out that if they wouldn't dug a pool. I know where the graveyard was in that area before they went to building all in there. When they went in there and selling that land, and they just went selling, and they wasn't thinking about the grave was in there.
After that, the terror escalated. Footsteps became almost commonplace. Ben was the first to notice the shadowy figures that loomed in the dark. Sometimes they would literally attack him in the garage, suffocating him. Jean finally had enough. She took a shovel and began digging next to an old tree, a tree, she was warned, that marked a grave site. However, she didn't make it but a few inches down. Her daughter died suddenly that day. With nowhere to turn and no way to console themselves, the family left that house forever. Although there are people like realtors and neighbors who may not believe what happened to the Williams family, it was hard not to notice all the for sale signs. The truth is, you never really know what you're building on top of. And in the process, if you disturb sleeping spirits, for this family, their lives can never be the same. For anyone else, well, hopefully, it's just a movie. This experience really hit the Williams hard, so much so they wrote a book to document their nightmare. And they firmly believe they weren't the only ones, that there are similar cases of poltergeist phenomenon.
Mom, there's a ghost up in my room.
She's really been not a scary ghost, but a mischievous ghost.